Victoria records no new cases of coronavirus as the state eagerly awaits news of easing restrictions. Anger after female passengers on a Sydney-bound flight were forced to undergo invasive medical examinations in Qatar.
This is a grossly disturbing, offensive, concerning set of events.
The corporate regulator's deputy chair quits after a review of his expenses. And the Melbourne Storm returns to its temporary base on the Sunshine Coast with the NRL Premiership Trophy. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. It's a day that was hard to imagine just a few weeks ago. There have been no cases of coronavirus reported in Victoria overnight. Melburnians are now eagerly hoping for news about when businesses can reopen after yesterday's delay. Here's reporter Stephanie Ferrier.
It's just such a fabulous day here in Victoria with that news. A lot of people are saying double donuts for the zero, and we've heard a couple of people talking about Duncan Dan's double donuts, and this has been a really fantastic achievement. A big, thumbs up to the people in the northern suburbs who all went out and really got involved in that testing effort following the cluster out there. But because we've just got not just the zero new cases, which is the first time since early June, but also zero deaths for the 7th consecutive day. So our death toll here remains at 817, and our all-important 14-day rolling average is now down to 3.6 in Metro Melbourne, 0.2 in regional Victoria. So that's, really low numbers and still both combined underneath that 5 benchmark. We also saw the mystery cases fall down from 9 to 7 over the same fortnight period as well. So it really is great news, and everybody has been feeling pretty good. There's even been tweets about donuts being sold out at the moment. So obviously Melburnians are getting that sugar hit with this sweet news here.
So does this then, Steph, increase hopes that Dan Andrews, the Premier, will give his long-awaited announcement shortly about reopening businesses?
Yes, well, it's interesting to note that we haven't seen him step up for his daily press conference mid-morning or even at the latest at midday. So that might tend to indicate that he's holding off on some of these latest testing numbers to be able to make that big announcement. Of course, there was a real feeling, a deflating feeling yesterday when everybody was anticipating that significant announcement on Sunday, and then it did not come because the Premier said that there was going to be a cautious pause to await the latest test results as following this cluster in Melbourne's north, which now has 39 cases across some 11 households. Jerome Weimar, who is the testing boss at the DHHS or Department of Health, has said that 2,100 tests have already come in from yesterday and they've all tested negative. They're still awaiting some testing that was obviously continuing last night as well, and no doubt they'll be out there testing again today as well. People here and a lot of businesses that had hoped they'd be given the green light to start thinking about reopening midweek were really disappointed, and business leaders said this was a crushing blow for retailers, for cafes and restaurants and small business owners that are just barely clinging on at the moment. Jerome Weimar does say that this is really needed though, this slight pause, because he likened it to being in a plane on the runway and you see that amber light flashing on your dashboard. You just want to make sure that you've cleared that before you go to take off. Here's what he had to say.
All of us, all 5 million of us Melburnians, we're all committed to this. We all want this to be over, but fundamentally, we need to have confidence that before we take that step, that we've got this thing under control, because there is no turning back. As soon as we ease off these restrictions, we are then in a very different era. None of us ever want to go back to the place that we're in at the moment.
Steph, it's a good day too for secondary students there.
Yeah, so finally, after all this time, we now have all of Victoria's school children back at school in the classroom. This was the last lot of kids to go back, the years 8 to 10s. They had to wait for a following 2 weeks after everybody else went back. And of course, this coincides with a lot of the Year 12 students going off and finishing school before their final exams as well. So we spoke to quite a few of them this morning, and they said that it's a really exciting time for them to be finally back with their friends and seeing their teachers face to face. Some did say that it was a bit hard to get the alarm and get out of bed as well after all these many months and a couple of terms almost of remote learning, and making their own school lunches again and all of that sort of thing. But they have said that they're really looking forward to it. They will have to wear masks. All secondary students will have to, and they're also staggering the drop-off time. But a great feeling for those 164,000 students to finally get back to class again.
Yep. Steph, enjoy the day, and hopefully there's more good news just around the corner. Tasmania is opening its borders today to most mainland states and territories. It's a big boost for the tourism industry. John Fitzgerald is the CEO of Tourism Tasmania and joins us now. John, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, we're feeling great, Roz. I mean, it's been such a long time coming to welcome back our mainland Australian colleagues to Tasmania. It's a very exciting time. Our industry's obviously been feeling it, so it'll be terrific to have visitors back to the state from today.
How's the industry been getting ready for the reopening?
Well, they've obviously been working on their COVID-ready plans. I think our industry, we've done a lot of work with our industry here. They understand their responsibility to keep Tasmanians safe and also to keep our visitors safe. So they've been readying themselves for welcoming back visitors, and of course that happens from today, so we're very excited about that.
Is there a level of concern about people coming in from the mainland without the need to quarantine?
I think, of course, some people will still be concerned, but I think the government has been very measured in its preparation for this day. We haven't opened too early, and we've really prepared our industry and our community for this day. So I think all the measures are in place to manage the risks that are there, and with Australia now doing very well across the board, and obviously borders will open in a staggered way to Tasmania. So we're watching all the markets to make sure it is safe to open, and we've started that today, which is exciting.
Yeah. How's it been since the borders closed then, John? What state is the tourism industry in there?
Listen, it's been difficult. It's decimated our industry. Around 80% of our visitation comes from mainland Australia. So without that, you can imagine how the businesses have been hurting. And Tasmanians have really responded to the call and have travelled in their own state a lot. I think having the place to themselves, they've got out there to really enjoy it and renew their affiliation with parts of Tassie perhaps they haven't been to for a while. But no doubt we need the mainland market back here. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, they're our main markets, and without them, you know, we don't have a sustainable industry. So today's the first step in an exciting program of welcoming visitors back to Tasmania.
Sure. Have many businesses just not made it?
Listen, there are some, Roz, there's definitely some businesses, but I think the measures that have been put in place at all levels by governments have helped the industry get through. The JobKeeper payments have kept small businesses intact, and the state government has done a lot to support businesses at this end. So I think most businesses have come through this, but of course it's in recovery where we've got to get that demand going and the money being spent in businesses. It's really the 6 months ahead that's most critical, but it's a red letter today that we're welcoming our first visitors back.
John Fitzgerald, thank you.
It's great to be with you.
The federal government has labelled the treatment of Australian passengers at a Qatar airport as offensive and deeply concerning. Several women were subjected to forced internal examinations. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Marise Payne, says the events are grossly offensive and concerning.
Australia has taken this occurrence extremely seriously. We've taken it up directly with Qatari authorities. We have been liaising with both Qatari authorities here in Australia and in Doha. We're awaiting the imminent outcome of a report from the Qatari authorities. I understand inquiries are still taking place with those people affected by this occurrence, and we also understand that the matter has been reported to the Australian Federal Police. That matter is further on that is a matter for the Australian Federal Police. This is a grossly disturbing, offensive, concerning set of events. It is not something I have ever heard of occurring in my life, in any context. We have made our views very clear to the Qatari authorities on this matter.
Minister, in your statement you said that...
What is it other than expressing outrage, and what is it you want to see from the Qataris? Recompense, an apology? What is it?
Well, I certainly want to see the report. I want to see the report of what occurred at the airport. I understand that the Qatari authorities intend to make that available, and then once I have seen that, we will determine next steps. It has been taken up directly with the ambassador here and, of course, directly with authorities in Doha, as I said.
The federal opposition says the government should be making the strongest possible protest against the treatment of female passengers at Doha's airport. Labour leader Anthony Albanese says he wants a full explanation.
Reports of this treatment are really disturbing. The idea that women could be subject to these very intrusive searches is, in my view, an absolute disgrace. The Australian government should be demanding answers from the Qataris, both the airline but also the government, that would have regulated the airports. I'm familiar with these issues. Indeed, the CEO of Qatar Airways has a role at the airport in Doha as well. And there's a real concern here. The government needs to really make the strongest possible protest to the government of Qatar, but also I think anyone who's heard those reports will be thinking with just a great deal of sympathy, and our hearts go out to the women impacted by this. This is incredibly intrusive behaviour.
And there'll be more on the diplomatic incident in Doha, plus the rest of the day's political news in Capitol Hill. That's coming up in just over 50 minutes' time with Matthew Doran, followed by Question Time. Well, now it's time for finance news with Sue Lannin. So, Sue, the Deputy Chair of the Corporate Regulator has resigned.
Yes, Daniel Crennan announcing this morning he will step down. Now, this is after the National Audit Office raised concerns about $70,000 in rental expenses he received. So he's saying it's in the best interest of ASIC for him to step down so the regulator's work is not disrupted. Mr Crennan repaying the $70,000. So this is after the Australian National Audit Office flagged issues with the payments made to Mr Crennan and other payments made to the ASIC chairman James Shipton. So the Audit Office saying the payments may have exceeded the limits set by the Remuneration Tribunal. Now, Mr Shipton has stood aside. That's pending the outcome of an investigation. He accepted more than $100,000 in tax advice expenses, Ros. And Daniel Crennan also saying the advice he received from ASIC was that it was consistent with ASIC's policy. He, of course, relocated from Melbourne to Sydney to take up the second in charge at the top of the regulator.
There's been a big hit to earnings at Westpac.
Yes, this is because partly related to the money laundering fine it had to pay and also written down the value of its life insurance business. So Westpac saying that second half profit will take a hit of $1.2 billion. So this is because of increasing costs related to the $1.3 billion fine for 23 million breaches of anti-money laundering laws. Westpac also paying out an extra $182 million. That's in compensation for customers because of financial scandals, and it's written down the goodwill of its life insurance and car financing businesses, Ros.
So we're hearing about Tasmania opening up its borders, and it's the best performing economy in the country again.
Yes, of course, relative to the other states and territories, Ros, but this is according to ComSec. So the state has taken out the top spot for economic performance. That's for the second quarter in a row. Now, that is in terms of population growth, home loans, home construction and retail trade. The ACT came in at second place. Victoria came in at third place. It lost ground because of her housing finance and retail trade. New South Wales fell to fourth position, so that's equal with South Australia, and the Northern Territory in last place on the list, Ros.
How are the markets?
Yeah, a bit of a lacklustre day with markets come off its highs now, up about 0.2% over lunchtime. Let's have a look at the numbers. The All Ords up just 7 points. The ASX 200 up 9 points. So we've got education stocks, consumer stocks, mainly higher. Going down today though, miners and the financial index. Looking at the movers, Coca-Cola Amatil has jumped. That's on the news about a $9 billion takeover offer from the European bottler Coca-Cola European Partners. And that's all from me. Back to you, Ros.
Thank you, Sue. We're taking you live now to Bowen in North Queensland, where Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk is campaigning.
Able to function and operate because we've had such a strong health response. So I think, you can hear directly from Carl and Ben in a moment about what the industry means to the Queensland economy, and the fact that people are in jobs gives me immense pride. That's absolutely wonderful to see people working. But today I'm pleased to announce that irrigation water costs for thousands of farmers across the state will be cut by 50%. So some 6,400 farmers will benefit. This $50 million announcement is broken down into two key components, and they are a 15% cut in irrigation water charges, and that will be for broad-scale crops like sugarcane, and then a 50% cut for half-price water for fruit and vegetable growers, recognising the number of people that are facing harvesting and picking jobs at the moment. So our commitment to the farmers across this state, 50% reduction, which is fantastic news, $50 million injection in funds. And of course, this is coming from our borrowings. We have said very clearly all along that we are funding our election commitments through the $4 billion in borrowings. We're yet to see how the LNP is paying for all of these promises they're making across the state. We're up to $26 billion. $26 billion of promises, and obviously the only way they can do that as they try to reach a surplus is to cut. Now is not the time to cut, so there's a very clear choice at this election. I'm asking Queenslanders to stick with me for this economic recovery, focusing on jobs, and do not risk Deb Frecklington and the LNP. This election's going to be close, we know that. Queenslanders know it's going to be close. But I'm asking Queenslanders to stick with me. What you see is what you get. Don't risk Deb and the LNP. I'll hand over to Minister Lynham to say a few words, and then you'll hear we'll talk about this announcement here today first. So we'll hear from Anthony, then we'll hear from Mike. It's great to have Mike here today. I think we're going to change your name, Mike, to Mango Mike. Very strong supporter of Bowen and the whole community out here, and I'd love to see him as part of my team, but he can't be part of my...
So that's the Premier of Queensland there, Anastasia Palaszczuk, campaigning in the north of the state ahead of the election in Queensland this coming Saturday. Anastasia Palaszczuk there announcing that irrigation costs for farmers will be reduced by up to half for fruit and vegetable growers. And the leader of the opposition, the LNP, Deb Frecklington, is also in the north of the state, the scene of several seats that are in play and important to the overall results. That is the latest from Queensland. Now, some of New South Wales' top legal minds are calling for reforms to the